A great welcome, dear guests of the spiritual channel on YouTube, with Gnosis and EB. And welcome to the 15th sequence of this series of videos. It is titled 015, Spirit. And that is our topic now to be treated. So we start right away with it. Namely, with its definition. For this, we look at foremost its known synonyms, which are thinking consciousness of man, mind power, also a human, as well as disposition, or inner attitude, and mind attitude. However, these synonyms for the definition of spirit are not helpful, and do rather lead into astray. So, to a definition of spirit to come, we must first set its conditions. And there is in the first place, the person as a human person. Because we know and recognize only people as persons. Due to the outstanding nature intellectual capacity of the human brain. Criterion for it is a self-perception and world perception. For it to be distinguished me and you. With a you, a separating distance is given to the world, which one does not find with the highly developed animals. And this world distance to a separated me and you, makes the people to an individual person. Because each human ego sees the world from his own perspective, of course. This each individual view of the world in turn makes the personal difference in humans. And then still with the person, the ever-individual curriculum body, with ever-own experienced history, comes there too. And so everyone has its very own personality as individuality. However, the spirit as such cannot yet be defined with it. Rather already consciousness and soul, which nevertheless are not our subject, in this sequence. So, what is the spirit, or what it can be recognized? In order to approach the concept further, we should also call to mind its foundation. And that can only be the non-objectivity. Because that spirit is not representational, should certainly be clear to everyone. Nevertheless, non-objective spirit needs a connection to objectivity, without which it could not be. So I see it, EB. And how do you see that?
As always, the reciprocal condition is above all, due to polarity as a fundamental world basis. There is always the pole together with its counterpole, the negative without the plus, and vice versa, and so forth. On this occasion, reference is made to deepen particular our 004 polarity sequence. Regarding the spirit means that we need a non-objective being to its existence. And in addition, still as a necessary counterpole, then a representational human. Only both together gives the basic requirement for spirit. However, with which still not automatically the spirit in the respective people is given. So, strictly speaking, spirit can be present in a person. The person of its spirit must be aware. For the characteristics of spirit is the consciousness of the spirit of itself. And exactly in this manner I define the spirit gnosis as a specific consciousness of spirit, which one gets only in the experience of spirit and then owns. Otherwise everybody could say in this manner, I know and use the word spirit. Then I also know what spirit means. So I have this spirit. No. Knowing what is spirit and to be able to think the spirit does not mean to have or possesses a spirit. However, is given with knowing and thinking the basic prerequisite to obtaining of spirit. and it occurs with a living experience of spirit, which the person changes as a spiritual making event, and with it the person extending component of its existence. Without concrete experience of such an event, one can imagine spirit only very hard. Actually, the just aforesaid spirit is necessary for it. If one wants to experience the spirit in order to get it so for himself, it will be difficult, provided it is mentally and morally prepared. But this was already, with Jesus Christ, a special subject, gnosis.
That is true, E.B. Only about the Bible, one comes to a real understanding what spirit really means. And in the Bible then, especially about the New Testament. So, the Gospels and the Acts of the Apostles, including the revelation of John in particular. However, I have the Spirit thinking concerning Jesus' conversation with Nicodemus. There Jesus said, among other things, what is born of the flesh is flesh, and that which is born of the Spirit is spirit. This coincides with your aforementioned statement that spirit in man is not natural given, and the fact that then consequently the human has the task to produce the spirit emotionally for himself in order to own it finally. With such a spiritual achievement, one has been born then from the Spirit. At other places says Jesus, the Spirit is the life giver. The flesh is of no value. The words which I have said to you are spirit, and they are life. Result is, without life-giving spirit everyone is, so to speak, a dead person. However, for a spirit birth Jesus makes the faith in him, as the Christ, dependent, as the first spirit born in the universe. Who therefore does not believe in Jesus Christ, as the first spirit born, has itself no chance to become a spirit born. This faith causes therefore a psychic and mental openness, which is necessary to be able to experience spirit. This corresponds with the biblical reports of Pentecost. There the universal spirit should have come over the people, which were open for it. According to tradition, those had been the erstwhile supporters and followers of Jesus. We can assume from the fact that the Pentecost event is typical for a spirit birth, which quasi-turns up the person. Exterior features for this were, at the time occurring in the situation, special skills. How about speaking and understanding others' unknown languages? Needless to say that such a spirit event represents a person's life on a new basis. E.B., you as obvious spirit born, will be able to confirm this certainly.
The Pentecost event is now not the pattern, forever same impact of the Spirit on people which it receives. As different as the people are, so individually different situational impact will be. What is valid, however, always constantly, gnosis, this is that the receiving are moved into an emotional racing superstate. He can be so overwhelming exceptionally universally that the receiving, as a reaction to it, only the universal adoration remains. That sounds for unsuspecting incomprehensible, I know. However, the Apocalypse delivers in addition a suitable picture, namely in chapter 4, verse 8. It says, "And the four beasts, having every one of them 6 wings, are full of eyes round about and inside. And without resting day and night, they say, Holy, 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 Lord God, ruler of all, who was and is to come. The symbolism is clear, because only with vivid images universal spirit is clearly set out. Universal all spirit just contains everything what is. And who can experience the universal spirit in himself experiences a self-fulfillment beyond measure. Then we obtain the only remaining possible response, which is the boundless adoration. However, the transitoriness belongs to the being of the time, so that there nothing can be long-lasting. Therefore, we have in the book of Revelation, as a symbol of lasting effect, the image of the book of life. Having once experienced the all-spirit means there to have been born of the living spirit as a book enrollment. And to be even enrolled as a spirit born in the book of life means to have received an imperishable basis of livelihood. That in turn is expressed in many pictures of the New Testament. In particular, the universal spirit there is also called water of life. To have drunk once from this spring means in such a way a thirst extinction on eternity. This spring offers Jesus Christ in and with his person to the normal person, in the manner that who believes in him together with the all-spirit as an everlasting life, thus the everlasting life will receive.
In all of this, to me the question arises, whether spirit is always universal, holy all spirit. But when I think about it, I realize quickly that spirit must be always universal. For that the universe may be only spirit, that follows from the all-encompassing of existence. Because we know that there can be no opposite of objectivity to the all-encompassing. So that then the universe can be only unconcrete in principle. And with an unconcrete universe, we are also automatically with the Holy All-Spirit. Because the universe exists in its all-encompassing at the same time, and on the other hand, as a representational world. Once again, we have to remember that on the basis of polarity is always a mutual condition of the poles. So, therefore, a fundamental mutuality of objectivity and non-objectivity. And thus becomes, from all-encompassing concrete universe, the unconcrete universal spirit. This fact is even more understandable when it is realized that the universe is a person. And that, due to the causality law, which allows no other conclusion. There, the end effect, with the ability and task for the initial cause, can be just a person, which is conscious about itself. In this way, it soon becomes clear that spirit and universe are interchangeable, identical. So, one speaks of the spirit, we speak of the universe. And if one speaks of the universe, one speaks of the spirit. But this, one must make himself conscious, as an unsuspecting, or unknowing, first of all. Exactly for it, this sequence about the spirit is thought and made. Furthermore, the association of the spirit with consciousness is obviously because the spirit is acting on the awareness. For this reason, the awareness should be our advanced topic in the next sequence. Namely the human consciousness, in its self-perception and world perception. But back to our present topic, the spirit, EB.
Unconcrete existence can be seen only as spiritual and be understood. Let us take as an example of unconcrete existence the ideas and programs, or also functionalities, as for example mathematics. Now you can here say that all these are already products of the intellect or spirit, conceived and produced by people. But if we look at the laws of nature and the cosmic evolution, then there are obviously principles effectively. Without these principles, no world structure would be possible, including us humans with our intellectual abilities. As everyone knows, principles are non-objective and therefore immaterial spiritual. Then the conclusion arises that we realize only with our intellect what is already provided us with nature. So one with the nature and in the nature located potential in unconcrete functions and structures. The mutual condition of objectivity and non-objectivity shows us conspicuously the nature, gnosis. Functions and structures are immaterial, although they appear as material objects. As a good example of it, we can take once the electricity. It is immaterial in its effect, although it is coupled with the electrons and the conductor medium to structure and materiality. And the electron itself is, in its duality as wave and particle, at the same time materially as well as immaterially. If we abstract now even further and reduce, then we end up with the principle of duality and polarity. And this coupled with the principle of the reciprocal condition of pole and antipole. As a result from it, we can conclude about the immaterial principles, thus to the universal spirit, forming the basis of all existence, gnosis.
With a mutual condition, is not to be said which pole of both has there the priority. And in relation to our topic, the objectivity or non-objectivity, ergo matter or spirit, I tend to give here the spirit the precedence over physical matter. Unconcrete spirit is just simply unassailable and unalterable with it. One cannot say this of the physical matter if we think there sometimes, as an example, of its radioactive decay. However, the spirit knows a threat that could be dangerous to it. And that would be a kind of malicious program that captures the spirit and submits to this program. After all, such a scenario is based on the history of paradise in the Bible, where the snake appears and the human couple seduced by temptation for a self-injury. The snake is a symbol for the possibility of the spirit to put yourself in question and to challenge. For what would be the spirit if he had not the freedom to explore itself and to learn of itself? Consequently must be put at the primordial moment of the spirit in such a self-test, to prove it as a living spirit who is able to determine about yourself. For me is clear, E.B., that the spirit must have found out both self-possibilities for his perfection.
And also only if he knows both self-possibilities by self-experience, he is master of itself. To get to know both all at once by experience, however, doesn't go gnosis. Then it needs a positional subdivision of the spirit to two polar self-positions. Besides, one self-position makes the experience of the self-failure with all consequences which such a failure with itself brings. So to experience in particular a temporal self-reality which must be marked by illness, need and death. While at the same time, on the other hand, the other self-position makes the experience of the self-control also with all consequences which such a superiority with itself brings. At the end of the whole process of self-experience of spirit, its positional subdivision should again be erased with a positional reunification. Then the spirit is the absolute master of its own, as the Bible presents it us, also known as Holy Spirit or the Universal All-Spirit. Thus it is a hallmark of the Lord, the universal God, to have lived through both self-realities of spirit and brought behind. Then one has, figuratively speaking, the key of both self-realities, the positive and the negative. Since it is not surprising if one can read corresponding in the Bible. Thus in the Revelation of John, chapter 1, verse 17 and 18. Just as there can be only one existence, as all-encompassing total singularity, it may also be only one all-encompassing spirit. It is manifested in the universal person, who must perform therefore all existence alone. So how it is to read already in the Bible, Old Testament, with Isaiah chapter 44, verse 24. In the Bible, the Spirit of God with 40 times, or the mind of man with 75 times, is called relatively often. If there the Spirit over somebody comes, gnosis, the affected person is virtually moved into another state of consciousness.
Such a state is not the spirit birth called by Jesus Christ, which gives the person a new existence. Only with Jesus Christ, in the New Testament, the spirit birth becomes possible, which before was not possible yet. I see the difference. The Old Testament concerning, in a limitation of the spirit receipt, which the person leaves untouched. This changes with Jesus and Pentecost, where the spirit receipt occurs for an unlimited period, and, besides, the person restructures. Clearly becomes the Pentecostal, personal change, with the subsequent community foundations, as well as the Christian martyrs. At the present time, it takes quasi a brainwashing to restructure a human being, so that another person is from him. Another difference between the Old and New Testaments is that in the Old the Spirit is received uncaused. Against it, it will be in the New faith dependent, and is caused by the person itself when it receives the Spirit. E.B. In the 007 dimension sequence you say that the Spirit is beyond all dimensions. Because one cannot divide and subdivide spirit, and so not dimensioned. But is not with each spirit born, in this way distributed the spirit on these people, then the spirit so divided? Or how is the situation, from your point of view?
Now, gnosis, it is certainly true that the spirit is quasi-monopolar, indivisible. With each individual, he gets only, so to speak, an individual face. So different material bodies, but always and in each body an identical spirit. From this identical spirit, the ever individual personalities remain completely untouched. This can one very easily show with a visual comparison concerning the light. As everyone knows, the light is starting from its source always similar or identical. However, it is reflected differently by different bodies, as well as in different media refracted differently. Quasi depending on how a jewel has its facet cut, arises there an individual play of light, also known as fire. It is then so that the spirit is the universal bracket that connects all people together. For the spirit is the universe, which in turn all men, as parts of it, belong. However, condition for it is that the people of all times and places joined to the Universal Spirit consciously. After all, who does not perform and in this manner goes into a counter position can consequently have no share of the Universal Spirit. But it is also completely clear to everyone, since, as everybody knows, who does not join to a matter belongs also not to it. For Jesus therefore was important that people join him as a person and his message. Who would not do this, that can have in him also no personal share. Whereby Jesus, born of the Spirit, therefore stands for the Universal Spirit. But you had already called this here gnosis. Then now only one question remains to be clarified, namely the one how to make a complete humanity to join the Universal Spirit. I'm sure, Gnosis, that you well know about it as excellent Bible expert.
Actually, I am well informed, E.B. For this purpose, we should here briefly deal with the Book of Revelation. For the Apocalypse is thereto ideal suitable, because it is an extended spirit-related vision. And if then even higher, divine inspiration comes thereto, the vision receives extraordinary weight. From the whole topic it is to be subordinated to the seer compellingly, because the content of the vision is so far removed from the everyday life of the people, so that could think of hardly anyone. Even if one considers the symbolism analytically, empirically experiential realities are very easy to find. From there is for me in the genuineness of the revelation, and her coded reality relation, no doubt. Therefore, now also the direct reference to the verses of the revelation, which appear to me here for our subject, spirit, very suitably. There I take out chapter 5, verse 6, where it is said that the 7 spirits of God are sent out into all the earth, whereby I not only geographically, but also temporally understand all the earth. Otherwise only a low period would be concerned, what however not limitable, then thus cannot be. Moreover, the biblical number 7 stands for a totality, which must enclose therefore space and time. If one hits a curve now from this earth expanse to Revelation chapter 21, verse 1, the connection becomes clear. The person of the world originator has been spread over the entire universe, which can be possible only spiritually. Therewith the world originator was deprived of his personal identity as a world originator, what is symbolized as a slaughtered lamb. And thereby arises an encompassing arc to the new heavens and the new earth, in chapter 21, verse 1. Because the spiritual and personal earth expanse of the world originator causes a hidden transformation of humanity, namely because thus the humanity is taken up into the universally expansed person of the world originator, and there personally is converted as an adaptation to the person of the world originator. The revelation uses for it the picture of a close ablution, according to chapter 7 verse 14, and chapters 22 verse 14. The close ablution occurs through the fact that the humanity must follow the world originator thus in all, as a result of its adaptation into his person. According to the chapters 7, verse 4, then 14, verse 1, and 14, verse 3. With the spatio-temporal earth expanse of the world originator, thus the humanity gets him pulled over, so to speak. Indeed, for the humanity indiscernibly, because then with such covering or adaptation the world originator is this new humanity himself. Thus I understand the apocalyptic symbolism, E.B.
I can always again just be astonished over you, gnosis. You have the revelation truly analyzed for you perfectly and have thus opened up to you the interrelationships of all symbolism. Especially you have well recognized the essence of revelation and set forth. Then there remains not much more to say for me. But I can imagine that the unsuspecting average person here gets difficulties to be able to understand something. This would again require universal spirit, but which you cannot have before. For it is only given for all, according to the revelation with the new heaven and the new earth. From the butchering of the world originator for a new humanity in him results thus a subdivision of the humanity to old and new. And because in the time the subdivision must take place at the same time, we get so two planes of existence. The logic corresponding quasi to separate parallel worlds. But via the logic, of course, it cannot be proved. As a result from the topic, I say now in summary, the All-Spirit therefore is the water of life, or eternal life, because it is non-representational. Finally, non-objective is subject to neither time nor space nor any process. Thus it becomes clear why a born from the Spirit cannot die or pass away. Even if he was born in the time as a material person and there depends on time and space, so that he must pass away. Once in time and space, with the All-Spirit connected, this means the survival to everlasting life. Blessed, therefore, who will have access to the universal Spirit and will so survive himself spatio-temporal, as a part of an in the All-Spirit existing spiritual world, which understands itself as higher indestructible awareness of existence. With it, I give again back to you, Gnosis, for your closing words.
Yeah, because also for my part, the subject has been exhausted largely. Characteristically, ends the revelation of John, with a mention of the All-Spirit. As it says in chapter 22 verse 17. And the Spirit and the bride say, Come. And let him who gives ear say, Come. And let him who is in need come. And let everyone desiring it take of the water of life freely. The called water of life is ergo, ebi, like you say, a symbol of the living All-Spirit, embodied in the universal person of the world originator. As the universe in person, as the personalized all-encompassing, or total singularity too. With it, we come now to the end of our today's topic, out from universe and system. And as had been already stated at the outset, our next sequence theme will be the awareness. If one asks me what spirit is, then I say, spirit as such is the all-encompassing total singular awareness of the universal person. In this sense, we say goodbye from the 015 spirit sequence. We would be very pleased if the video series would find your favor. Okay, then up to next sequence. It remains to us faithful and recommend us.